Well, hello everyone, and how are y'all doing? It's been a while. You could realistically think that I was dead. Yeah, it's been a few months, but I'm back, I guess. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the channel, and I kind of want to get back into things, at least in some new capacity. Maybe finish off some of the projects that I never did in the past, So we're hopefully going to be taking a look at that, getting back to it, doing some new stuff, doing some old stuff. And it's not like I technically went anywheres, because ever since March, for the past 4 months, as of recording, I have been streaming Animal Crossing every day over on Twitch. And it's all archived on my second channel. Links in the description. Go check it out. There's over 130 episodes of me doing Animal Crossing. And that's where we are right now because, why not? I mean, I got nothing better to do, and hey, it seemed like fun. But yeah, with that quick little update, and I'm sure we'll talk about more stuff in the future. Today, I want to talk about Avatar The Last Airbender. So, a while ago, this kind of made waves on the internet because they put Avatar The Airbender on Netflix, and everybody started watching it again, including myself. And at the time, I wanted to talk about it. I was like, I'm going to talk about Avatar. It'll be fun to talk about it because I really do like the show, and hey, I haven't done anything on the main channel since like January. But that's just the way it is sometimes, It'll be fine. It'll be fine. But here we are. And so even though I talked about it on stream multiple times as I watched through it, I never did a main video, but I want to get the main channel up and running, so we're going to talk about it today. And I know Legend of Korra drops in a few weeks, so we're going to be talking about that then, because I am curious to rewatch Legend of Korra. Since Avatar dropped, a lot of people have been talking about it again and talking about whether or not Legend of Korra was good. The consensus seems to be that it isn't, but I'm going to watch it myself and I'll give my thoughts on it when we do. Personally, I don't remember it being that bad. And Avatar was pretty good. And I know Legend of Korra is an Avatar, and probably nothing ever will be. The movie definitely wasn't. Also, this is my turtle liar. Isn't she great? So, my history with Avatar The Last Airbender. I should probably talk about this. I know I've told this story before, both on stream and elsewhere, but I'll be honest, I didn't always like this show. I really didn't. And yeah, I'm sorry for that. I just didn't. That's how it used to be. And it's sad to think about because, right, it's Avatar. Everybody loves this show. How did I not like it? Well, it's a funny story, actually. I have 2 brothers. If you've been around, you probably know that. And my youngest brother used to watch Avatar The Last Airbender. And because I am the eldest brother, it is my responsibility to hate everything the youngest brother does. He liked Avatar, so I didn't like Avatar. That's just kind of how it worked. That was how it worked. My brother and my father used to watch it way back in the day, and I didn't. I thought it was dumb. It was dumb, and again, I wasn't a weeb at the time. I just thought it was a dumb show. But luckily, things have changed. And what brought about this change, this is actually very important to the history of this channel, which is why I must have told this story before. So, way back in the day, the nostalgia critic, Doug Walker, wanted to review the Avatar The Last Airbender movie, but he felt like he wasn't equipped to do it So instead, he was going to watch all, 60-ish episodes of the TV show. And then after watching that, he was going to have perspective on the TV show so that way he could properly review the movie. And now I know nowadays we've turned on Doug Walker, and it makes sense that happened. I'm more talking about the change the channel stuff, which yes, and less about the cringe stuff and like the Pink Floyd's The Wall review. You know, I can handle most of the cringe stuff. I haven't seen the Pink Floyd The Wall review. I haven't watched his stuff in a while. I mean, I've seen a few of his older videos because, yeah. But I'm fine with Doug Walker and most of his incarnations, right? I can still watch some of the older stuff and be funny, but that's a side tangent. So Doug Walker did the series on Avatar. And I was like, oh, this is pretty good. I should start watching the show for myself. And so I watched Avatar along with, right, he'd do a daily vlog. I watched that episode, and I basically watched through the entire show. That was my first experience with the show, right? As like actually watching it and realizing, oh shit, this is actually really good. And then Doug Walker would go on to do his Avatar review. Later on, he did another vlog series of Adventure Time. I also watched that. I was already watching Adventure Time by that point. I remember watching Adventure Time's premiere back in, 2010? Ugh, that was a while ago. No, I remember the first episode of Adventure Time I saw was on iTunes. I had an iPod back in the day. And on iTunes, they would occasionally give out like the first episode of a series for free. And I remember downloading I think it was actually the second episode of Adventure Time with the lumpy werewolves. And I remember watching that. That was the first time I saw Adventure Time. Oh, God. Okay, that's a tangent. But so I watched those series and I was like, oh, these are pretty good. You know, I could probably do this myself. And then one day Steven Universe season 3 premiered and I was like, you know, I have some thoughts on this. Let me give my thoughts on this. And the rest is history. Of course, I do not remember if Doug Walker did videos on Steven Universe first and then I did them, or if I did them and then eventually he did, because he also did a Steven Universe vlog at some point. I don't remember which came first. I just know they happened, and I would not be surprised if it was either way. But yeah, so Avatar is actually very important to this channel. And that was my experience with it the first time. I loved it. And I was excited to see it again. I also showed my mother this show. My mother kind of will watch whatever. And I was like, hey, I'm going to rewatch this Avatar. And she was kind of interested because she saw it top trending on Netflix. And so I was like, hey, let's watch it together. And we basically binged a lot of the show together. Especially that by the last season, she was so into it. I maybe should have gotten her to talk about it. Because she's also seen Steven. She's seen the first season or two of Star. She's seen a lot of stuff I talk about. Because she's totally in. Her favorite show right now is Ant Farm on Disney+. And she likes a lot of the Disney shows. But yeah, so I rewatched the entire show. It still holds up, man. It is still a fantastic show. Everything about it is it's exactly what you'd expect. Everything is great. Yes, are there problems? Mm-hmm. There are problems. Specifically, the episode I always think of is the one everybody always thinks of, The Great Divide. But that's it. That's almost it. The rest of the show is fantastic. And that rewatching it, I was just like, okay, we're going through, we're having fun. First 2 episodes, pretty good setup, right? Just it's our basic setup, hero, villain, friends, right? All the stuff you need. Then the 3rd episode comes around and it's like, oh, this shows something more. The Southern Air Temple is great. It sets up that there's more going on in this show. And then from there, it goes into its world-spanning adventure. You have a lot of fun. You go to fun places. It can be dark because these are characters in a war and they're dealing with the results of war. You learn more about the Avatar, nature. You learn about people in the war. These characters are dynamic and interesting. You see their ups, you see their downs. And then the Great Divide happens, and it's like, admittedly, I don't hate the Great Divide as much as other people do. I'll admit that. I was always like, I remember people just like shitting on this episode. And I was just like, it's bad. Yeah. It's bad. Like, I feel like I've seen far worse in other shows. But I mean, the bad is good because it lets us appreciate the good. Because we see how bad the show can get in The Great Divide and Legend of Kora, we know how good the rest of the show is, and it allows us to appreciate the main show better. Then after that, there's a lot of adventure in season 1 where it's just like going from place to place, meeting new people, exploring the world building aspect, which some people will have I've talked about this before. Filler, a lot of people bitch and moan about filler, and half the time it's bullshit. Filler is a perfectly fine thing in a show that I feel, yes, I know when most people talk about filler, they talk about like anime where, a manga has been written and the show's gotten up to a point that the manga is no longer keeping at pace with. The manga is far beyond that point, or the manga is catching up. So they need to put in some filler to buy time for the manga to gain more space before starting the next story arc. But the good thing about filler is that it allows us to explore characters. It allows us to get more in depth with characters, see more interesting thing. And there are just some shows that I feel like suffer from it. My Hero Academia. I like the show. I've read the manga. I really do feel like that show could use some filler. It's going to from where I left off, which I think the show's actually got past where I left off because I stopped watching the show after like the second season. But I know, and then I started reading the manga, and I think the where I stopped in the manga, the show's already gone past that. It happens. But my big problem with My Hero Academia was that there wasn't any filler. I wanted some time for the characters to relax, enjoy their setting, have fun with it. Because this is a fun, interesting world. And they never did it. They just kept going in the show, in the manga. And I was like, give us some room to breathe. And that's a minor problem. But this show gives us a lot of room to breathe. We learn about a lot of different elements in this world. We learn about the war. We learn about how these people live. It really is a lot of setup in the first season. It allows itself to go darker. It allows itself to go lighthearted. The comedy in this show is also pretty good. It's fantastic. Sokka is amazing. He does not get it. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, Sokka's great, but I still don't feel like he gets enough credit. He really holds the whole team together. It's fantastic. And then at the end, you get to the Northern Water Temple, which I love how they do Katara. The entire time she wants to be a better waterbender, learn about this. She even steals the waterbending scroll. You get to the water temple and it's just like, nope, you can't learn waterbending. Fantastic arc for the character. Fantastic. Everything about this show is great. And then you get the Siege on the North, which is a great two-parter. The whole thing with the moon spirit is fantastic and heartbreaking at the same time. Everything is set up so well in this first season. The villains, all the characters, their motivations, their goals, and the great thing is, like, you have all this great setup, and this show actually carries through on it. So many times do we see shows where they have like a good start, and then it just falls apart at some point. You start off so strong. Yeah, promise so much, and then you just fall apart. And throughout these 3 books, they never falter. The weakest points are in the first season. The second season is great as well. Now, watching it again, I had realized I don't remember the Cave of Two Lovers. It's the second episode in the season. I don't think I had seen it before. When I watched the show for the first time back in, I don't know, during the vlogs, I don't remember actually seeing the Cave of Two Lovers. The entire thing was completely unfamiliar to me. The whole song about the secret tunnel, people were memeing that, and I was like, I don't recognize this at all. I don't remember that. I guess I just missed it, which I think is pretty funny. The second season introduces us to Azula, who is a fantastic villain, and we see her as like our more present antagonist. Because the great thing about this show that I know people don't like about Legend of Korra is that this show spans the characters, right? They go from one place to another. It's a whole world-faring adventure, whereas Korra doesn't do that. Personally, I didn't mind. Again, we will talk about Korra in a few weeks, but I didn't mind it in Korra. Korra was more about a city, and I was fine with that. But I know people have their problems. Agree to disagree. They eventually run into Toph, who is not shown on my banner. There she is. And Toph is great. Toph's easily my favorite character in this thing. She's so funny and fantastic representation. And they treat it with all the respect that all the respect it should be treated with, but they're also not above making a joke. Not at her, but with her. Because half the time she's the one making the joke. And half the time it's really funny. She plays off of Sokka great. Also, Sokka, Katara, Toph, Zuko. I know there are endless debates about how we pronounce these names. That's how I pronounce them. Deal with it. But Toph is my favorite. Just hands down. She fits into the group dynamic great. The one I like is bitter work, where Toph's trying to teach Aang earthbending, and Katara's like, oh well, when I teach Aang waterbending, I have to teach him this way, and Toph's just like, tough love, this is how I'm going to teach him. I'm going to be hard, strict with him. And eventually she finds a balance, but not in like oh, Katara was right, Toph was wrong, and it's just really well done. It's a really good way at looking at teaching, and it really does establish the group dynamic between them extremely well. And Sokka also is trapped in a hole for most of the episode, and it's just as compelling and funny. They go to the library, and the library's fantastic. The entire world building of this show, taking from Chinese, Japanese, Buddhism, Inuit. The world building of this show is great, because the Great Library is something like you feel like you'd hear about in mythology. Like if you told me that was like an old, I don't know, Mesopotamian tale, I wouldn't be surprised. That's how well done the world building is in this show. The fighting styles are all based in real world fighting techniques. All the bending has its influence. It's all just so well made, so well researched. Then you get the big twist halfway through the season where you learn that Appa has been kidnapped, which, God, the episode right after that where they're in the desert really fucking sells it. Aang is almost at his breaking point, and it is believable the entire way through. Like, this is his lowest. It's not technically his lowest point, but it's one of them. I'd argue the lowest point is probably when he almost died. It's just heartbreaking to see. The emotion carries it. And Katara just trying to keep them alive, Sokka high out of his brains on cactus juice. It all just follows through. And then Aang is just so angry. And then you get into Ba Sing Se. They introduce Suki again, which she's great in Kyoshi Warriors, and I'm so glad they brought her back. And the way Sokka interacts with her after she's back and after losing the girl whose name I'm forgetting, because again, I rewatched the show over a month ago, is great, well handled in The Serpent's Paths. And then you get Tales of Ba Sing Se. Now, the first time I watched the show, I knew about Mako. I knew what happened. And, it didn't really do anything. But the second time, it got me. I cried. I'll admit it. I'm not above it. I have said many times before, a good show is one where the emotion is enough to carry you through and make you cry. And this one did its fucking job. And I cried. Not hard, but I cried. And it's a good show. It's a good show, man. And the rest of the episode, like, you think, like, Tales of Bossing saying everyone remembers it for the Uncle Iroh stuff. But the rest of it's also pretty good. The whole point with Toph and Katara about the makeup's good. Seeing Sokka deal with poetry stuff is pretty fun. Zuko going on a date is really cute and helps show his path to redemption. And then it goes into Zuko's whole thing about how, like, he's struggling between his good and his bad self, which, again, I showed the show to my mother who had never seen it before. And immediately in the second episode, she picked up on Zuko being redeemed. She was like, oh, I want him redeemed so bad. And she was so happy when these episodes came up. And it was like, oh, look at him. He's on his path towards redemption. Everything's going to be good, right? He's going to join Team Avatar. He's going to teach Aang firebending. Everything's going to be good. So you get to the end of the season, and he betrays Aang and the team. After it looks like he's almost about to be on their side, at the last minute, his sister convinces him right before she almost kills Aang. And her reaction was great. It's, again, you can always enjoy that thing for the first time. And I know people always bitch and moan about spoilers, but there's always somebody who has never seen it before. And they can get that same joy out of it, never seen it before. Oh, it was fun. I had fun. And yeah, the second season ends on a dour note of the teams. Zuko's betrayed them, even though he technically wasn't fully on their side. Aang is defeated. What are we gonna do? It's a good end to a season. This is our Empire Strikes Back moment. It's fantastic. And that takes us into the third season. Aang's still alive, and everything's gonna be good. They have their goal of the solar eclipse. Zuko's back in his father's good graces. They just got to reach their goal. And it starts off, I like that, right? As this whole world traveling adventure, you start off in the south. We go through the part of the Earth Kingdom, eventually arrive in the north. Then they go into the Earth Kingdom, and now they're here in the Fire Kingdom. Yeah, it tracks. And we see how the people live. I know people don't like the headband all that much because it's basically just Footloose. But honestly, I think the headband's actually a pretty important world building episode. Yes, it is also Footloose, but it really does tell us how people live in. It tells us how the Fire Empire lives and how everything works in it. I think it's good world building. Sokka's master is good for developing him, because that is totally a question that I could totally see people bring up about Sokka's the non-bender. He's the non-interesting one. Giving him the sword is pretty interesting. I like that they make it out of a meteorite. That's awesome. And again, a lot of this stuff is stuff that was set up in the first season, that they're now coming back and paying off like a good show. Because there are plenty of bad shows that will set up shit early on in the first season that will either be completely forgotten or they'll freaking bastardize and completely misunderstand and do something completely different with it. It's so difficult sometimes. And then from there, we get a few more episodes in the Fire Nation, learning how they live. My favorite episode is the Puppet Master. Because that's a question you ask early on. Like, isn't water bending, if you can water bend, the human body is what, 60% water? Can't you water bend a person? And I like they say in the first season, water bending is learned from the moon. So the idea that during the full moon, you can blood bend is great. I love the implication that not every tribe is perfect. Having a villain from the water tribe, especially in that final season, is exactly what the show needed. It adds a whole new layer to these things. It's still very obviously Fire Nation bad, Earth Nation good, except for Bossy Say, which Bossy Say is complicated. Water Nation's good. But it adds that layer of complexity that I love. That's why I love the Puppet Master so much. And it explains a lot about Katara, and you learn about her mother. I know that comes up later on when Zuko joins the team. Then you get Nightmares and Daydreams, which it was an episode I didn't like. I know there's a funny joke in it or two, but I didn't really care for it. And you get the Day of Black Sun, which is their invasion, and their invasion's great, and I know they fail, but I'm actually fine with them failing, because it not only does it up the stakes, but it makes sense within the world. But Zuko betrays his father, and it's fantastic. It's exactly what you want from him. Also, the Fire Lord is played by Mark Hamill, one of the greatest voice actors of our generation. I have to point that out every time because he's so good at what he does. Oh, he's so good. Then you get the Western Air Temple, another episode I love of Zuko joining the team. Fantastic. It's not like the best episode. Like there are definitely ones that are better, but I personally just really enjoyed it. It's one of the few episodes that I've gone back in between my original watch, and this watch, and just watched again because it's good. I enjoy it. They learn fire bending. You get the boiling rock, which that scene of May and the other girl, whose name I'm forgetting, betraying Azula, fantastic. It almost comes out of nowheres, especially with the other girl whose name I'm forgetting. Don't at me in the comments. It's great. It's great. And then you get Ember Island players. Again, the show's funny. It's really funny. And as recap episodes go, this is maybe the best recap episode ever made. Doing a play to satirize the show itself, make fun of all the jokes throughout the show, make fun of some episodes, but also recap your entire show. It's done the best here. This is a fantastic episode. While it doesn't advance the plot, it does give one last moment for our characters to reevaluate themselves before the final episode. And then you get Sozin Comet, which is the ending, and it's great. Everything that has been set up pays off. The battle between the Fire Lord and Aang is great. I know some people hate the Deus Ex Machina of him taking away the bending, but I think it's really clever. I think the way he gets it is Deus Ex Machina, right, where he gets it from the lion turtle, but him actually doing it, no. I think it's a great solution, especially because everyone else tells him he has to kill and he's going to find another way. I think it's a great idea, being able to take away your bending. And that's why I thought the start of Kora had a lot of promise. The idea of a villain who could take away people's bending is very interesting. But Kora has its own problems, and I guarantee you we will talk about them. But yeah, I like the ending. I think it's really good. I like that one moment afterwards where they're all back in Ba Sing Se in Iroh's tea shop, just having some tea, being a family. Because, all's well that ends well. It all worked out. They succeeded, and now they can go on to live normal lives, have kids, found Republic City, and then Kora fucks everything up for everybody. We'll talk about it. But yeah, I still love this show. It's still fantastic. It's still everything you want it to be. Of course, did I say anything today that nobody else has ever said? No. My thoughts are echoed by thousands of other people. If you have already seen it, which I'm assuming you have if you're watching this video, and you didn't rewatch it when it came to Netflix, rewatch it. God, it's so good. And Legend of Korra comes to Netflix in a few weeks, and I'm going to rewatch it, and we're going to talk about it, because I did want to start, immediately after I finished it. I was like, God, I want to rewatch Legend of Korra. I know it's complicated, but I do want to rewatch it. But this show is fantastic. It really is one of the best things. Did I talk about the whole Western anime thing? This show is where I get my theory of Western anime and Eastern cartoons. Because everyone is like, this show, Avatar, is basically an anime. And yeah, I agree. It is basically an anime. And I think it really starts the genre of Western anime. This and like the Boondocks. Whereas Eastern cartoons are shows like Panty and Stocking. Right? That's just its influence. And Avatar has definitely been influential. And many people have tried to recapture it over the years, including the creators themselves with Legend of Korra. And nobody's done it as good as them. I do think this show I do think other shows can come along that can be just as good as better, or if not better. That can happen. I'm not putting it out. But this show is amazing. I truly do love it. And even though I added nothing new to the conversation here, I'm glad I got a chance to talk about it again, because it's great. And who knows, maybe we'll talk about maybe in this weird Animal Crossing setup, we'll talk about new shows in the future. You never know what might happen. Because these are strange times, people. These are strange times. I hope you all enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. Until next time, peace.